Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Movie Crusaders channel. I'm Brian Michaels. This is my co-host tonight, Sean Wasserkrug, and we're here to talk about the Super Mario Brothers movie, but not that one. No, because this is CineMasochism. We don't watch good movies here. We watch shit, and we shit on it because, we are masochists, hence the title. As I said, this is my co-host, Sean Wasserkrug. Sean, how are you feeling today, and are you looking forward to watching the best Super Mario Brothers movie ever made?
I watched that yesterday. It was in theaters, not this movie that we watched together in a very, very painful manner. I'm better today because we didn't have to watch it today, but we are talking about it today. So it's, I guess, kind of painful, but not all the way. Maybe.
Yeah, so this is almost 30 years exactly. It's about 2 months off between Super Mario Brothers movies. Super Mario Brothers, I believe, was the first ever even attempt at a video game movie. I think.
I don't believe that.
What was before it?
You challenged me. I'm gonna look it up while you're talking, but this cannot be the first video game movie.
I mean, there's nothing from like Atari or from arcades or from.
Keep doing your thing.
I'll keep doing my thing. So it may have been the first attempt at a video game movie, and it started a long trend of horrible video game movies, but not from Nintendo, because Nintendo made this one attempt, and they pretty much stopped making live action video game movies until Detective Pikachu a couple of years ago, and now this. Between that and all they made is some animated Pokemon movies. That was it. This was so bad the company said, we don't want the money, we will just protect our properties. Yeah, did you find anything?
I'm still looking.
Still looking, okay. I'll give you the information right now. Super Mario Brothers came out in 1993, May 28th, 1993. Directed by Annabelle Jankel and Rocky Morton. Those are some household names, and I'm sure they went on to great feats afterwards. Starring Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, Samantha Mathis, Dennis Hopper, and Fisher Stevens. All people I like, all people who I imagine just wanted a paycheck, but we'll get into that later. This movie had a budget of $48 million, which today is about $100 million. It opened at $8.5 million for the weekend, behind the opening weekend of Cliffhanger and Made in America, and behind the movie Dave in its 4th week in theaters.
We all know how much Brian loves Dave.
We love Dave, so I have no problem with that being successful. Its total run was $20.9 million, which today is about $40 million. To put that in perspective, the new one has made more than that in less than its first 2 days. And worldwide, it only ended up with $38.9 million, which is about $80 million today. Again, the new one has made more than that, almost double that in its first 2 days. It's got a Letterboxd average score of 2.0 out of 5.
That's generous, by the way.
And IMDb gives it a whopping 4.1 out of 10. Yeah, and those are very generous. Personally, I gave it a half star. I don't know where you at on this one, Sean.
I had to look it up real quick. I remember my score was different because I rated it from like remembering it as a kid, not since we last watched it. But I want to say it's like a 1 or not. Yeah, I think it's a 1 star.
Now or your original one?
No, original. I think it might have been like 1.5. I think it's a 1.
Oh, is that low? Okay, because when I first brought up this movie for CineMasochism, Sean was hesitant. He's like, I don't hate that movie. He was like, I might have to defend it.
Look, no. The one I have to defend is one we haven't talked about yet. I remember. Look, and okay, and I did look it up while you were going through all the numbers. You are right. This is technically the first film that was a video game first before it was a movie. Yes, there were movies out previously that were movies that were adapted to video games, but this is the first actual video game that was adapted to a movie. So, damn, I didn't think 1993 was the first one. I thought there might have been one in the 80s or something. But maybe it's because I'm thinking of Tron. But Tron was not an actual game.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, the thing is, video games...
And then the wizard and all that stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, video games were kind of... I mean, because they were very simplistic at first. I mean, there was some arcade stuff, but also back then, I mean, the kind of the kid audience was not the main audience for movies. And kind of as it got on, as special effects moved on, I think they thought, oh, we can make movies out of these things. But they weren't really ready to make them well.
Honestly, though, as bad as this one was, it did open the door, because within the next 2 years, you had like 7 video game movies between this, Double Dragon, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. I mean, they just kept coming out of the woodwork at that point.
There's a door that should remain well shut.
Not necessarily, but in terms of back to what you said previously of me defending this, look, and I said this in my review for Super Mario Brothers the movie. If you guys haven't checked that out, it's on the channel right now. Brian has not seen the new movie yet. He says he really doesn't care to see it right away, so he'll probably wait till streaming. I was super excited for the movie because, and much like Brian, because Brian was a gamer when he was younger too, Nintendo has been a part of my life since I was a child. I had the original NES. I played those Mario games to death. I played the Super Nintendo games, the N64 games. It wasn't until they went to GameCube that I was like, all right, I'm moving on from Nintendo. So Mario, I loved the hell out of the Captain Lou Albano Mario show. I loved that show. That show was I will still to this day say that show was the shit. That was an awesome show.
Oh yeah, the Saturday morning cartoon thing, and they had the live action segments with him. It's like, yeah, that worked for. They had the right tone. They knew what to do with it.
Even the Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon show was great, but it was the reason why I said I might have to defend this is because the kid in me was so excited that Mario was getting his own movie that when I was a kid, you don't know movies are shit when you're a kid. It wasn't like at this point I was 7. I wasn't going to the movie like, that movie sucked. No, it was just like, oh, that's Mario, that's Luigi, that's Yoshi, because the princess was not Princess Peach. Let's just be honest. But you got to see them on screen. So it didn't. Was it Mario? And that's one big argument that we have about this movie is that this is not Mario Brothers. But as a kid, that was Mario, kinda. So did I hate it? No, it's no different than me being like, when I was a kid, yeah, I liked Street Fighter. Do I know that movie sucks? Yes. But as a kid, I enjoyed it. A, because it was Jean-Claude Van Damme and Raul Julia as Bison and Guile. Why wouldn't I have liked that? But the movie is fucking garbage. But I have a special place for it. Watching it back with you, that place is dead and buried and it's been, been eaten by maggots.
I murdered Sean's inner child.
Yes, but it doesn't stop the fact that there are movies from your childhood that you're gonna defend because your childhood nostalgia brain doesn't want to let go. We know this from 2 years ago on the Weekend Crusaders when I made you watch Rockadoodle because as a kid, I loved Rockadoodle. I loved that movie. Watching it today, or 2 years ago, I didn't hate it, but as I was watching it, I remember going, this is not as good as I remembered, and Brian's going to be so mad at me, and Brian has never let me live it down. But
I have not, but I mean, I totally understand that, though, because, like, there's like, especially with TV shows with me, there's things that I loved when I was a kid, and I actually won't go back and rewatch them, even though they're on, like, streaming and stuff now, because I know that they live on as this wonderful thing in my memory, but if I watch them, I'd be like, this is the worst fucking shit. Like, I mean, the original A-Team and Dukes of Hazzard, the original series, things like that. When I was a kid, those were the best things in the world. If I watch them now, I'm sure they would be horrible.
And sidebar this, because let's face it, there's not a whole lot of love to talk about for this movie, so we can sidebar some shit. And I've talked about this on the show. I can't remember what episode of whatever episode we were talking about for this, but I was trying to be smart growing, becoming an adult. And I was like, you know what? I'm eventually going to get married and have kids. I'm going to start buying all the crap that I loved when I was a kid. I'm going to start buying like the real Ghostbusters cartoon series. I'm going to buy the X-Men series and the Batman and Turtles and all these things. So that way when I have a kid and they start to get to that point where they're just going to hit repeat and watch the same shit over and over and over again, that they're going to watch shit that I loved. Not Blue's Clues or whatever the hell people, the kids are watching nowadays, or SpongeBob. My God, fuck SpongeBob. But I was like, I'm gonna make him watch that shit, and so I got that stuff, and I was like, well, let's go back and watch it. But I went back and tried to watch real Ghostbusters. I couldn't make it through 3 episodes.
Oh yeah, cartoons are bad too. I went back and watched things like Thundercats and what was the other one? G.I. Joe. And the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, I recently went back after I saw the movie. I'm like, I want to go check out the cartoon. And I watched an episode online. I'm like, oh, this is horrible.
There have been only 3 animated shows. No, sorry, 4 out of those many, many, many that I love that I can actually go back and rewatch and not just absolutely loathe it. 1 is Turtles. 2 is obviously Batman and X-Men, because those are great for all ages, and they still rock to this day. And the fourth one would be Tiny Toon Adventures.
Oh, I love Tiny Toon.
Tiny Toons is still great to this day, and I'm wondering why they haven't brought that back yet.
They did bring it back on Hulu, and oh no, I'm sorry,
No,
that was
Animaniacs.
Animaniacs. That was Animaniacs. You're right.
That was Animaniacs, and I was always Animaniacs was fine, but I always
it was not as good as Tiny Toons. So I love Tiny Toons.
Tiny Toons was the best. Give me Plucky, Buster, and Babs. Give me all those guys back. I love those guys so much. I would be so happy to see them come back in Hulu, just like Animaniacs did. But everything else, like, and what broke my nostalgia brain, especially for like Ghostbusters, because I had a Ghostbusters suit, I had all the toys, I had all that shit, was that I also would watch like Garfield and Friends, which wasn't a bad show, it was fine. But then I realized that the same voice actor voiced Garfield and Peter Venkman in the cartoons.
Mhm.
And then, of course, my brain went, Bill Murray's also Venkman and the voice of Garfield in the Garfield movies. So then my brain couldn't comprehend that just coincidence. And so I couldn't watch Ghostbusters because every time Venkman talked, I just heard Garfield. And then I was like, I can't watch this anymore. So I've literally have had that whole DVD set sitting over there on my wall. And it has only been 2 episodes in of that entire series. And I have not watched a single one since because I just can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I bought a lot of cartoons and things from my youth, going, "Oh, I'm going to show my kids," and then either they just had no interest in them, or if I tried to show them one while I'm sitting there with them, I'm like, "I'm sorry, I made you watch this. It's horrible." We turned it off.
Yeah, it sucks. It really sucks because it doesn't make you want to not go back and watch stuff that you loved when you were a kid. It makes you terrified to go back and watch them as when you were a kid. The Transformers movie is still really good, but I'm afraid to go back and watch the series, and I have the entire series. But I mean, so when you go back to these movies that you loved as kids, like I remember, it was Weekend Crusaders. I want to say it was Weekend Crusaders. I finally picked that we were going to watch Monster Squad, and I had been the biggest fan of Monster Squad. I had loved that movie. That was I championed that movie for years, and I even told you, Brian, I'm terrified to go back and rewatch this movie, because I'm afraid I'm not going to love this movie anymore. And it's going to hurt me because I loved this film so much as a kid. And it was fine. It wasn't as great as I remember, but it was still good.
But it wasn't
yeah, it wasn't like the best thing ever, like, Land Before Time or something like that. But I mean, it still was solid. But I remember telling you, I'm like, dude, I'm so scared to go back and rewatch this movie. You'll be fine. But that's what it's like with Mario. It's like Mario, and we will definitely be talking about Double Dragon and maybe even Street Fighter at some point. But it's one of those things like they have a special place here because as a kid, that was my only outlet to them. And so I had to embrace it and like those. But then you grow up and you start to get that little, jaded mindset of like, oh, this shit actually does suck. And then you like go back and watch this old movie that you used to like when you were younger. And you're like, oh my God, this movie's horrible. And
I don't have the same complete nostalgia for it, just because I was obviously older when it came out. I think like I played the original Mario Brothers video game, not Super Mario, but the Mario Brothers. I remember playing in arcades all the time. And then by the time Super Mario came out, the Nintendo system came out, I was in high school, I believe. By the time this movie came out, I was like 20 years old. So I was not the target audience for this movie. It was not made for me. It was made more for little kids. And
it really wasn't though.
Now I played Super Mario, the first one, for the first 3 of them, and I was awesome at them. I was featured as Power Player of the Month in Nintendo Power Magazine. I have that thing sitting somewhere.
That's actually pretty cool. I'm not even gonna lie.
It actually is pretty cool. But I had a little like a third of a page bio on me. It's the most embarrassing thing in the world because like
it's not embarrassing.
They called me up and like did this interview, what kind of games you playing and what advice you give and all this stuff. And they talked to me for like 5 minutes, and by the time they edited it down to like this little blurb, it just made me sound like the biggest idiot. I'm like, oh, I look like an idiot.
You were a kid. It's not like you went like, I like turtles. You didn't say that shit. Like, dude, be proud of that.
I mean, I was 16 at the time, but yeah.
Okay, you were a teenager. Still, be proud of that. Fuck, man. I remember
that is just to say that I did play the games when I was a kid. The first 3. I don't know if I've ever played. I think I've played Mario Kart like at a friend's house once or twice, but I really. and when it got into, you know, the Yoshi's World and the Mario Karts and the Smash Brothers and all the other stuff, I've never played any of that stuff.
Honestly, Smash Brothers to me is overrated unless you really like fighting games, which I'm kind of meh on. Mario Party and Mario Kart will end friendships. They will start fist fights.
I've played the kart knockoff games, like I've had like Madagascar karts and things like that. You know,
yeah, Mario Kart will start fist fights, and Mario Party will make you not trust your friends ever again. And you know what? It's all fucking warranted. There are some friends out there that I used to play those games with I don't talk to anymore because they're backstabbing sons of bitches. And it's not like back in the day when you played Monopoly with someone and they made you go bankrupt. No, Mario Party and Mario Kart will end friendships with people because of the backstabbing shit that you do. And for anyone who's played those games, you 100% know what I'm talking about. Brian doesn't, apparently. Y'all out there, y'all know what I'm talking about. Fist fights, black eyes from those games. If someone throws a blue fucking shell at me, I'm throwing hands. I'm throwing hands. We used to, at my previous job, my second previous job before where I'm at now, when we were bored, we had a big TV with a Nintendo Switch on it. We'd put Mario Kart up on there. And we would literally, it would be me against somebody in the building because I was the best Mario Kart guy. And it would be if you guys can beat Sean, you can go home early. And they couldn't beat me. So then they would get mad. And then they would at one point I was beating a guy so bad, one of them jumped on my back to try and cause me to lose. It's a Switch. I don't have to be in front of the screen. I can just keep pressing straight. It's still.
You should have just been like, give me $10. I'll lose to you so you can go home.
Honestly, it was just more the competitor in me. I didn't care. I just wasn't gonna lose because I knew if I lose, they'd be all jumping up and down oh. I was like, no, I'm not gonna let you guys get that. But I don't care if you guys go home early. I'm still gonna win. But no, those games will cause absolute fights in the most fun way possible. But yeah, it's. Yeah, those games.
I didn't play these things. But yeah, that's a major sidebar. Like you said, there's not a whole lot we're going to talk about in this movie. I think in the past we've gone sometimes through the entire movie scene by scene. Especially when we got into Dungeons and Dragons, I realized that may not always be the best approach because a lot of it was just really boring.
In situations like Tiptoes and well, we didn't really do it with Kung Pao because it was just horrendous. But
that was a hard one to start with. Yeah,
yeah. There's some movies that it's just not needed.
But so today we'll talk about this one in more broad strokes. We will get into certain scenes, things like that. But we're not going to go through the entire movie scene by scene. Just some general information. Well, first of all, this is just like the worst cash-in the history of cash-ins. I get the motivation for it. I get that we have this property that's super famous. Let's make a movie of it. But the problem is by the time they made the movie, it was kind of a dip in popularity. So they waited too long to do it. But they also just didn't care, I think, because this is a period when companies didn't make their own movies. There wasn't a Marvel Studios. There wasn't things like this. Even Marvel would just license out oh, you want to make a movie? Sure. DC is oh, you want to go make a movie of something? Go ahead. We'll license it to you. Give us some money. You can go make the shittiest TV show or movie you want. And Nintendo did the same thing. They had no interest in being a part of this. They just licensed out. And I had a quote. They said Nintendo had no interest in creative control because they believed the Mario brand was strong enough to allow an experiment with an outside industry. So they're whatever, just as long as the check clears, you go make your movie.
I mean, they're not wrong, though. Mario has stood the test of time. I mean, it's been going on for almost 40 years now. It ain't going anywhere.
I'm actually surprised this did not hurt the brand because it's so bad.
You know why it didn't hurt the brand? Because a new Nintendo system was going to come out with a new Mario game, and anyone that was jaded about Mario from this movie would have went right back to it. You know what that game was? It was called Mario 64.
Well, and I think that one of the saving graces was that fact that this was almost Mario Brothers in name only. It was so not the game and the world and the characters that people are just oh, that doesn't count. We just ignore that.
Which is why I adore this new movie so much more, is because this movie literally is just Mario. It's 100% the Mario world. It doesn't, and I even said in my review, was this is why Mario should only be animated and never go live action, because there's no way you can do what you did in this movie in live action and have it not look stupid or not be. You have to have people. How do power-ups work? How does the Rainbow Road work in real life? No, just fuck you. Shut up. Keep it animated. and you're not gonna have to answer those questions, and that's what makes this new one so great. I still until this last Mario came out, Super Mario Brothers, yes, is not Mario Brothers at all. The best Mario Brothers film before this new one came out was The Wizard, because The Wizard made you
90-minute commercial. Yeah,
it was exactly. And when Mario Brothers 3 shows up on the end of that, you're like, oh my god! I still to this day want to know how the fuck they knew about the flute, and they never played the game before in that movie. But I digress. The Wizard was the best Mario Brothers game or movie until this most recent one came out. But yeah, I agree. This movie, because I remember you said that it's like this is not even Mario Bros. I'm like, no, it is. And then I'm watching, like, yeah, Brian's right.
Yeah, beyond the fact that there are two brothers named Mario and Luigi, and they're plumbers.
Oh, hold on. It's Mario and Luigi
Mario. With a total creation of the movie. That is not anything, from the game.
Not even a thing at all.
But yeah, I have all kinds of information on the production of this and the scripts it went through, which we'll get into later. I do want to, before we start, one quote that kind of had me floored. It's the Mario's creator, Shigeru Miyamoto, who said about this movie, in the end, it was a very fun project that they put a lot of effort into. The one thing I still have some regrets about is that the movie may have tried to get a little too close to what Mario Brothers video games were. And in that sense, it became a movie that was about a video game rather than an entertaining movie in and of itself. What the fuck was he watching?
He was probably still trying to do that thing where he wasn't trying to dog shit it and was trying to just put a good positive spin on it. That's the only thing I could think of, because no, this movie is not at all movies or the games. Not even remotely close. Not even a weird spin of, well, we modernized Mario, because it's still absolutely not. I did get a little tidbit of today, and I don't know if you had this in your notes, about Bob Hoskins when he found out that what character he had signed on for, because he didn't know Mario was a game. Do you have this tidbit? No.
Yeah, go ahead though. Yeah.
Okay. So Bob Hoskins, who we love. I even said it as we were watching this back. I was like, I miss Bob Hoskins. And you were like, yeah, I do. I was like, it kind of makes me sad watching him, because we're watching him in this. And I really do miss Bob Hoskins. Is when he got casted for the role, he didn't know that Mario was a video game. And so I believe it was either his kids or his nephews were like, oh, you're going to be Mario. It's a game. And he's like, what? Yeah, it's this. And they showed him the game. And his response was, I used to be King Lear, and now I'm this. And I was like, wow, dude, because all I did was just seeing this weird fat dumpy guy jumping up and down on shit, and all I could think of is, I used to play King Lear. And I was like, oof.
Yeah, I don't have the exact quote in my because I didn't take the notes down on this, but Dennis Hopper was interviewed talking about this, and he talked about the story about how his son, when his son was like, I don't remember, like 6 or 8 years old, like saw this movie and how bad it was, and he's like, Daddy, you're a good actor. He's like, why did you do this movie? And he said, well, because you needed new shoes.
It pays the bills.
And the kid replied, I don't need shoes that badly, Dad. Okay, so now let's get into the actual movie here. Like I said, we're not going to go through the whole thing. First of all, I knew we were in trouble in the opening when the whole opening was done like these bad computer graphics, which, I mean, we watched Dungeons and Dragons last week. Was it last week? Yeah. And it was like PS2 cutscenes kind of thing. This is like 7 years before that. And you're kind of like, I kind of respect them for trying new things, but when the technology isn't there yet, it just does not seem to work. What gets me, though, is to realize that this movie came out the same year as Jurassic Park. And you compare the two.
I'll defend this. Yoshi actually does look good.
Yoshi does look good. Actually, from what I read, the guys who did Jurassic Park actually came and they saw the Yoshi puppet, which apparently they spent like $1 million on just the Yoshi puppet alone. And at one point, they considered opening like a second, puppeteering or whatever department and having these guys work on some for Jurassic Park. But of course, that's when they decided they're going to do a lot of it CG, so they didn't end up doing that. I'd say one of the good things about it was the Yoshi puppet.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't look like Yoshi, but I mean, it's a baby dinosaur, and the baby dinosaur actually did look good. So if there is one shining little molecule of anything about this movie, is that the dinosaur puppet looked good.
Yeah, but even in the rest of the movie, it's like the effects, because the effects supervisor, the creature designer, Patrick Tatopoulos, who also did like the Roland Emmerich Dublin movies like Independence Day and Godzilla, things like that. He was aware of the concurrent Jurassic Park production, so he consciously designed the dinosaurs to be more cute and cartoon-like, with inspiration from movies like Beetlejuice, which I get. He's like, we're never going to compete with Jurassic Park, so let's just make ours more like, more artificial and cartoony and things like that. But again, you're set in this live action world, it just does not work.
Did you say cute like Beetlejuice?
The only way I see that is the Goombas with the big bodies and the tiny heads.
Okay,
that kind of like a shrunken head guy, but that's about it.
I was like, there's nothing cute about Beetlejuice at all. So, anyway, continue.
So yeah, early in the movie we find out that an asteroid hit the Earth and that created a parallel dimension, which I don't know the science of how these kind of things work, but apparently a parallel dimension, but apparently only of Manhattan.
Yeah, that was the weird part too, is it wasn't the whole world, because like there's that one part where Koopa has like the globe. It just has like
it's like a globe, a whole planet with just one city on it.
Yeah, it's like that's all it is.
Which I found out. I don't think they mentioned it in the movie, but maybe, or if they did, I missed it. But apparently, it's called Dino Hatton.
The world is
the city they live in. There is Dino Hatton. I don't remember the mention.
I don't recall that ever being said in the movie. Actually,
we then see that an egg being dropped off at a church or a nunnery or whatever it is, and these nuns just take it inside, and then a baby hatches from it, and they seem like it's the most normal thing that ever happened.
They are chill,
and this is still in like our world.
Yeah, they are so like just okay. First off, a gigantic egg.
Yeah,
that's one thing. Like, this is a gigantic egg. What is in it? Then it's just a hatch, which at that point I'm like, what are we about to see? And it's a baby, and these nuns are just like,
okay.
It's like,
you should either be scared out of your mind or be like praying because this is some kind of weird miracle or something like that.
Yeah, it's a weird note to start the movie on right away.
Yeah, and then this, of course, and then they jump, 20 years later. Who, by the way, this was the Samantha Mathis character is apparently who was born in this egg, who isn't Princess Peach though. She's just Daisy.
Princess Daisy, but she's not Princess Peach.
Yeah.
Why they didn't want to go with Peach on this? Because once again, this is not a Mario Brothers movie. Because why follow that? I mean, yes, you've got Koopa and you've got Mario and Luigi, but no, fuck Princess Peach, because apparently you can't have her be that name. Let's call her Daisy.
Yeah. Mario and Luigi, who, Bob Hoskins, I see why they picked him for Mario.
In terms of looks, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's not Italian or anything, but I can see it. And like Leguizamo, I mean, he's not Italian. He's Hispanic, which he addressed and said that, you always see a lot of Italians playing Latin people like Al Pacino did in Scarface. Now it's our turn. That was his response, which fine.
I mean, Leguizamo was an up-and-comer at that point. Like, he wasn't going to say no to any film, but this was his biggest movie to date at that point.
Oh, so, yeah, he hadn't really been in. I mean, he had appeared in some movies and things, but he hadn't started anything. I remember, I don't know if it was before or after this, I watched a TV show, like a skit show he was on called House of Buggin'. Do you remember that? I don't know.
I did not see that. I think the first thing I ever saw him in outside of this was The Pest. Yeah,
the only thing I remember about the House of Buggin' is Luis Guzman was also on it. So
makes sense.
I remember enjoying it. It was kind of like after In Living Color, they had like the Wayans brothers had made this like essentially a Black Saturday Night Live, their own sketch show. It's like they said, oh, let's try this with the Hispanic community, and they brought in like John Leguizamo, and he made his version, which was actually entertaining. I gotta say, from what I remember. Like I said, I'm not gonna go back and watch it now. Yeah. The other thing I noticed very early in the movie is how much ADR there is, or looping is, which most people watching this know this kind of thing. But when they re-record dialogue, like when they have driving scenes or outdoor scenes when there's lots of background noise, or when they change lines, they'll go into a studio and like while they're watching the movie, try and like dub in the lines essentially. And this movie, I swear, half the dialogue in this movie was dubbed.
Yeah, I remember that we were watching that scene where they were driving, and the whole time you're like, oh my god, the ADR in this is horrible. And I was like, I wasn't really paying attention.
It's like they felt like they had to have them saying something. We couldn't just watch in the car drive or whatever. They feel like we have to have them constantly having these one-liners and things like that, and none of it was funny, of course, like that. But it's just, I think I didn't take the note down again, but there was somebody involved in the movie said this is the most ADR they've ever seen done for any movie, and so I was right about that. I was right about that. Yeah, let's jump to the part where where they first meet Daisy.
Well, she's being stalked.
She's being stalked, and she wants to use a payphone, which John Leguizamo's on, and he offers to let her use the phone, and then they can tell she's in trouble, and they're like, she's like, I have problems, and they're like, well, we have a van, why don't you step into our van? She's already being stalked by somebody. She's met complete strangers.
She's been threatened by like some mob guys.
Oh, the Scapellis, yes.
The Scapellis.
Yeah, yes, because her like archaeological dig or whatever is like holding up their construction, is what it is.
Yeah, so she's being threatened by these mafia dudes, and she's being followed by Koopa's guys. Not that she knows that yet.
Yeah.
But then here's Mario and going, we got a van, you want to hop in? And it's like, this is 93. That shit's still not cool then.
Yeah, there's like step into the van, like they're complete strangers. For all you know, they're working with these other people, and even if they're not, there's still a couple of weird guys in a van.
Because you got Leguizamo. As much as I love Leguizamo, because I do, he's one of my faves. He's got this creepy like smile. He's like, we got a van, and here's Hoskins behind him, like, I was like, dude, you guys are giving off the stupidest stalker vibe possible. Like, if she gets in that van, she's not making it out of that van in one piece, which, I mean, she actually does because these are the heroes. But in any other film that you did not know that these guys were the heroes, these are the bad guys because they're creepy. Yeah, Leguizamo looks like he's about ready to, like, he wants to eat her, not in the way that we're talking about. But you have Hoskins behind him just, like, creepily, like I was like, yeah, no, the whole acting of this scene is just wrong.
Yeah, and then they like invite her to dinner. Did she invite them, or they invited her to dinner?
He invited them to dinner. Or no, sorry. Luigi couldn't talk because he was flubbing everything. So Mario was like, what he's trying to say is he wants to invite you to dinner. Yeah. And then as he's doing that, once again, Mario's kind of doing like that. Yeah. Like this thing. She's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, all this, and then they go to dinner, and she hasn't even changed her clothes. Like, she's still in the same group. So
the girl's kind of dressed up. She shows up in her same like archaeological dig outfit.
She's been dirty and messing with all day. And, like,
she's having a wonderful, table conversation, like how she was abandoned when she was a kid. To which Luigi's like, "Hey, you were abandoned? So was I." It's like, that's what we're gonna bond over, really? Our abandonment issues.
Yeah, that's basically what it was there. But yeah, it was so naturally, because the script is as basic bitch as it can be, that little molecule of you were abandoned just like me, cool, was all Daisy needed to really just mesh with Luigi.
Yeah, suddenly they're apparently in love. I mean, they were not in love.
They didn't really go that far, but that's the point where she's like, let's run and like flirt and yay and all this kind of shit. Let me show you my deepest, darkest cavern of treasures. Not in a sexual way. She means bones. Also not in that way. But there's no chemistry between these two at all. Outside of just the script says that these two need to be together in a way. Because Leguizamo and Mathis, they literally have zero chemistry. Did you agree with that? Did you see?
Oh, I didn't. I mean, it wasn't like the kind of thing where it's like I felt like they didn't go together, but I definitely didn't feel any spark there at all.
Yeah.
There was nothing.
I mean, Hoskins and I forgot the actress who plays his girlfriend.
Yeah.
But they have more chemistry than Mathis and Leguizamo do. But yeah,
Yeah, so then shortly after that is when we finally get into the dino world. Like I said, we're going to jump past about the boring stuff.
She gets kidnapped by Koopa's guys. They jump through a rock portal. Luigi and Mario jump into it, and then boom, they're in Dino Manhattan, which I thought it was Mushroom Kingdom because that's what Mario is, but apparently it's Dino.
It's Dino Hatton, which Mushroom Kingdom, which I think at one point King Koopa refers to the Mushroom Kingdom or something like that.
Too. That's why I didn't.
They talk about the king being the Mushroom Kingdom. But the problem is, apparently the writers or whoever made this movie just heard the idea of Mushroom Kingdom and they thought, oh, mushrooms, that's a fungus. So we'll just have fungus everywhere in our town, and then it'll be the Mushroom Kingdom. And like, not quite. It's a little bit of a leap. I don't know.
But there's also more to that than we don't know at that time. But yes, it's basically, honestly, when we first get down to Dino Hatton, I go, this is basically looks like the underground sewers of Demolition Man.
It absolutely looked like, which was made the same year, so I would not doubt if they like recycled some of the sets and things like that.
Except that there's streets and you can drive with cars through it. Of course, no one has license down here because everyone's just it's destruction derby down there. But it literally looks like the sewers where Dennis Leary and everyone lived in Demolition Man. It's just grungy and like you said, fungus crap everywhere, and just weird looking human/reptilian people. But like you can tell that the budget wasn't fully given to them enough to really add some stuff. You have like a woman that's like kind of scaly, but then looks totally normal everywhere else. And you got like was it like food vendors putting like little lizards in hot dog buns and shit. It's like just weird crap to be weird crap.
Yeah, so that was the thing. But and then there's like, I mean, like when they finally start getting chased, there's like these signs going off, and there's actually an audio thing going, plumber alert, plumber alert. I'm like, is this just a common thing they have on standby that you watch out for plumbers?
Apparently, it's because they basically become like enemy number one in Dino Hatton. I hate that that's a thing now. I hate that I'm saying that. But yeah, and then they run into Toad, of all people.
Toad, which in the games, correct me if I'm wrong, Toad is named that because he's like a toadstool, right?
Yes, the whole race they're toads. Even in the new movie, that's what Peach calls them. Like they call him Toad, but at one point in the movie, she like tells Bowser, "Please don't hurt my toads." So that's just their name, plural.
But they took it as meaning like Toad, like the amphibians. Yeah. Instead of being like a little mushroom person and things like that.
Yeah, it's basically this like homeless like guitarist guy. You know, you see like in New York with like his case on the ground, you throw money, but his hair is spiraled, I guess, to look like a mushroom head. Like that's basically Toad, and he just kind of gets lumped in with Mario and Luigi through this, and he becomes kind of like the secret hero of the movie in a way, but it's not really earned because this actor, whenever he talks, his dialogue is cringy.
Well, he wasn't even an actor. He's played by a guy named Mojo Nixon, which he was a part of a musical duo. It was kind of almost like comedy music kind of thing. It was Mojo Nixon and Skid Roper, I think was the thing. Where he made comedy songs. Like the one I remember was called Debbie Gibson is Pregnant with My Two-Headed Love Child. Don't ask me why I remember that. Because Winona Ryder was in the music video for it. That's why I remember it. Yeah. Because I was obsessed with Winona Ryder at the time. So they had him play this role, and I was like, why pick him for this role? Apparently they wanted Tom Waits for this role, who of course is like, I'm not going to do this movie.
God, I don't even want to know what that would have looked.
And so basically Mojo Nixon's agent said, hey, my guy is like a third-rate Tom Waits that you can get for half the price. And so that's how he got the job. Yeah.
I mean, granted, the actor's in maybe, if you stop clock it or stop watching it, he's maybe in a total of 2 minutes of screen time before he turns into a Goomba. Mm-hmm. Would you really brought on Tom Waits for 2 minutes? He probably would have gotten turned into a Goomba.
That's probably why I didn't do the movie. Which, as long as we're here, let's talk about the Goombas. Yeah, what the hell was that? I mean, I guess I don't know how they were going to do that in live action, but it's like they decided to go for it. Kind of picture like the 2014 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with like the big giant linebacker builds, except even tinier little heads on them.
Well, because I mean, if you look at what a Goomba is in the video game world, I would find it very hard to figure out how they were going to adapt it in the live action. I mean, but this wasn't necessarily where I would have went, because the only thing that's really terrifying about these Goombas is that they're big, but they're really slow. They're not mobile.
Because the people in them can't see anything through the chest where their eyelid is. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but in terms of like, if you were a person that lived in Dino Hatton and you were going up against a Goomba, honestly, you being as small as possible is an advantage, because you could probably like be right under them and they can't see you. They're probably easily trippable. And we already saw in this movie, if you sway them, they will dance.
Which I still don't even understand how that works. It's like, are they just that stupid that if you sway them, like, oh, I guess we're gonna start dancing now? It's like, I
You know
don't
what? They live in
understand.
a world where dancing is illegal, and one of them finally decided to break out of their shell, and they got to have their footloose moment. Don't be mad at them for that. John Leguizamo is a saint. He's Kevin Bacon. But it's a weird design. I mean, at least they started to give them all a little bit more of a look. Like, they didn't all look the same. Like, even Toad, when he gets turned into a Goomba, he still has the swirl on the top of his head, so you could tell it was him. But like you can see the ones that had glasses, they had like these little like Coke bottle like lenses on their head, and there's ones that have more of a longer, stout than, and others are just kind of like a straight up, thing. So I mean, they at least gave them some, not really a personality, but they at least gave them a different kind of look, so you can kind of differentiate between them. But yeah, there's really, because like you got to the point at one point, like it was during the dancing scene when the elevator door opens, and it looks like there's one of them that's like in charge, because he's like, hey, stop that. It's like, is he smarter than the other Goombas? Like, did
Maybe he wasn't de-evolved as far, because that's the thing is this all happens because of this evolving machine, which apparently is what he
like, you get to choose which time period you want to turn them into, which I don't know how that equates to them turning into a Goomba, but then you also make their brains smaller, but it also turns them into a lizard. But then when Koopa turns his was it nephews or cousins?
Whatever they are, like his two main goons, it's Fisher Stevens, and I don't know the guy's name.
Yeah, but he basically doesn't turn them into lizards. He just makes them smarter.
Yeah, he makes them smarter. Although there's two things about that. First of all, when they comes out, and the first thing he starts talking about is, what's the square root of whatever, and he gives this number. I kept finding in my research, everybody pointing out that he gave the wrong number. He didn't give the right square root of that number.
It's perfect.
So it's like they didn't even bother writing the script, or else maybe they just like read it wrong and nobody noticed or something like that.
That's probably what it was. He probably said it wrong, and they were just like, "Ah, fuck it." No
like, whatever. Nobody's gonna do the math. They didn't realize the internet was coming.
Yes.
The other thing is, it only made them smarter in terms of like the way they talked, because they started talking like this very aristocratic kind of voice, but yet they didn't know how to drive a car. They were still bumbling idiots, and
they had more of a presence of mind and a higher intellect of vocabulary, but they weren't like fucking MacGyver geniuses that could come out that could just outdo anything anyone else could do. It's not like, Limitless, where he takes a pill and he's just like amazing. Like, they really didn't grasp what making you smarter doesn't mean you talk smarter and then are just better. It just made you sound more and more like an idiot.
I guess this is also maybe what led them to suddenly they were good. Well, first they get captured in the desert by Mario and a bare-chested Luigi, because I mean, obviously, well, he's 20-something years old. He was in good shape, so of course he's gonna be like, I'll show off my chest. Bob Hoskins like, I don't care how hot it is, I'm not taking my shirt off.
Yeah, I mean, Leguizamo's not like shredded, but he's he's in shape, but he's not like ripped with muscles or anything. But you got to give something for the ladies who want to come see this movie, apparently.
I guess, but then after they capture them, at one point they basically just switch sides and they help them take them to her father and all this stuff. And
yeah, it was more or less like, I guess, like their intelligence realized that Koopa was actually evil, and so they just decided to turn on him. But even then, they only turn on him when they're trying to see the thing sway to the other side. But even then, like, all they do is really help Princess Peach get to meet her father. And then they're like, we're out here, and they bail. And you don't see him the rest of the movie except for in the post-credit scene. Like, they bail completely. Like, if anything, that makes them the smart thing, is that they realize we need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And they just get out. But I know we're jumping all over the place in terms of the film, but like I said, it doesn't matter.
Well, we're not gonna, like I said, we aren't really going to go through the whole thing. We're just kind of touched on scenes. So whatever you think of, feel free to bring it up.
Yeah.
There's one scene we did skip if we were trying to go in chronological order. At the police station, there's this cop there who's getting some kind of weird massage with somebody's stiletto high heel. What was going on with that?
The guy, I can't remember what the right term is, but He's the one at the desk that basically, they bring them in and process them basically.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there and he's high up on this desk, and he's asking them what their names are. Mario, Luigi, Mario. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, how many Marios are between you? 3. And so like we're paying attention to that, and then also they turn the camera, and like he's looking down at them, and then you also see this like high-heeled boot, like right here, like, oh, that's just probably a weird depth thing. It's still weird, but then you realize like, no, this high heel is like massaging his shoulder.
There's a woman like sitting on like the wall or something like that, sitting on the counter and like digging her stiletto heel into his chest. And it's like, it's not like he was enjoying, he wasn't like, getting off on it, but he wasn't like, hey, stop doing that. Oh, there it is. There's the mic drop for today. But he wasn't like trying to brush her off. He just like sitting there while she just dug her heel into
it.
It
was. I literally told Brian, did Quentin Tarantino shoot this scene? Because it was just like, no, because it was Tarantino, the stiletto would have been off and the feet would have been dirty. But it was just one of those things like, who's this scene for? Like, who in director's like, what would be really cool is this stiletto. This lady was wearing the stiletto and she was massaging.
Well, that's when, like I said, when I started getting into the trivia and such about this, is there was like 2 different warring factions in the making this movie that wanted to make it really kid friendly, childish, and wanted to make it like, let's upgrade and have strippers and things in it. So there's a weird.
Well, yeah, you also have the club scene, like
the club scene.
When they first show up and they're trying to like chase down Daisy and Koopa's cousins. They bump into this Big Bertha looking chick. I don't remember what her actual character name is in the movie.
Big Bertha's her name.
Is it Big Bertha? Oh my god, I pulled that out of my ass.
Yeah, she's the one who gives them their jump shoes.
Yeah, and for some reason this world is all about spikes. We noticed that too. Like there's spikes on outfits, there's spikes on the walls.
King Koopa's hair is like basically done like spikes.
Yeah, everything is spikes. So they run into this Big Bertha chick. She's in this red, like leather, spiky outfit, and she basically takes the rock, the meteorite that Daisy's had all movie, which you realize is basically the
It's a shard of the meteorite that once they put it back, once they combine it to make it complete again. Yeah, it's the MacGuffin.
The MacGuffin of the movie, because you need
once they make complete again is when like the bridge between the 2 worlds will be open so that King Koopa can go back and take over the other one, I guess.
Yeah, and so she steals this, so they realize that they got to go back and find her to steal. So we get this dance club scene where Luigi and Mario are dressed all up in these bright ass yellow and red suits, and we get to watch basically Mario like mac on Big Bertha and do this like
very unsubtly trying to get the necklace off of her.
Yeah, this sexy sensual scene while he's like doing this to her neck, trying to like, dude, you're not smooth at all. But then he somehow gets it loose and she doesn't feel it. But it's like he's literally all up on her neck and she's just playing it off. But then like you also like feel bad for her like at the same time, because once he like disappears, like she's left dancing alone and she like looks around like she was just abandoned. And you're like, wait, am I supposed to feel sad for this woman? But yes, she does introduce the rocket boots that basically gives Mario and Luigi the jumping abilities that they would have in the video game. But they only work like 1 or 2 times.
Yeah, they use them like for a scene or 2, and then it's actually in the. I look back. They go into the elevator scene that you're talking about with the swaying, dancing Koopas. They have them when they go in. They don't have them when they leave that elevator. Don't know. They just decided to write them out.
The only thing I could think of is that they were probably too heavy to, because remember their dances they could climb up the chute. Maybe the boots were too heavy, and they ditched them. I don't know, but once again, that's me coming up with thought process for why they would have ditched them. But honestly, it's probably an error in editing and stuff like that. But yeah,
the club scene also, by the way, the club scene I think was basically one giant plug for the soundtrack, because in the 90s especially, 90s were all about the soundtracks. They would put all kinds of popular artists on them and just so they could put out an album of miscellaneous artists and put the movie's name on it just to put something out people would buy. And this is one, I mean, this is a slice of the 90s. I mean, you had like Walk the Dinosaur was the main song.
I shit you not. I had that cassette because it was from the Mario movie, and I played Walk Like a Dinosaur at nauseum. Hold on. Walk Like a Dinosaur at nauseum on my Home Alone Walk Boy from Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Yes, Talk Boy. Yeah, it worked because I did that.
Yeah, because the soundtrack, it was them, it was the Divinals I recognized on there, and then the main song. How you know it's the main song by Roxette, who was hot at the time, is because the movie ends. The first credit you see, it's not directed by. It's the first one is featuring the song whatever by Roxette, and we're like, really? That's your first credit?
That's the first thing you want everyone knows. And then this like real romantic ass song comes on. Like, this doesn't fit the movie at all.
Well, that was the other thing about the 90s, is they would just put songs in basically just to put them on the soundtrack, and sometimes to be considered for, Oscar or awards things.
I mean, same reason why,
the only reason it existed was over the end credits. It's like the Kiss from a Rose by Seal for Was a Batman Forever.
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Bryan Adams is oh my god, the name of the song.
Everything I Do for You. Although that one actually incorporated the score that as well.
It did. But I mean, I never heard that song in the actual movie, but I did, see the music video, and it had Costner and I'm
Mary Elizabeth Antonio.
Yes, but yeah, Walk Like a Dinosaur though, man. That when that thing played, dude, like flashbacks in my brain went off. Like, oh my god, I know this song so well.
I think Sean was at odds watching this movie because he was having these wonderful nostalgic, these core memories come back up from his youth. But then at the same time, he's like watching how horrible it was. So it's like,
I mean, you're not wrong. It was a very conflicting watch.
It traumatized him.
It was very.
Then we finally see them change into their Mario Brothers costumes that we know, which I mean they get their classic colors. There's a red and blue for Mario and the green and the yellow. No,
it's green and blue. It's green and blue and red and blue
for Luigi. Yeah. So although we still can't figure out why, Bob Hoskins Mario is in like I think called a newsboy hat.
He is.
Like Leguizamo, I guess it's like, I ain't wearing that shit. And so he has like a backwards baseball cap. So
yeah, Luigi still has to be hip and cool because it is Leguizamo. And you can't have him wear the big ass like Luigi hat. So it's like you have to modernize it a little bit. But yeah, they're at least, once they actually put those outfits on, it did actually, I'm not gonna say it made the movie better, but it made it feel a little bit more like Mario because at least you're watching him in the right outfits this time.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So then this is when they get into the big escape where they have to save the princess and everything, fight their way out. The one thing I enjoyed about this part was at one point they get a hold of these guns, right? But the guns, here's the one way Nintendo is tied into it, is these guns were actually a Nintendo accessory called the Super Scope, which was used for some games, just painted black, and they used them as guns in this movie.
Yep, and they were like de-evolved guns.
Yeah, that's what they were. Yeah. But they were just repainted Super Scopes from the Super Nintendo system.
Because they were going to use them for when they went to the real world, and they were going to de-evolve humans back into apes, which they do at one point. Because at one point, the meteorite actually does get put into the rock, and then like Koopa and some of the Goombas and Mario all get transferred over. And then Scapelli's there, and like Koopa shoots Scapelli and turns him into an ape before they all get brought back to Dino Hatton. So yeah, but we were watching, we're like, those look like NES guns, and you're like, oh my god, they are.
They actually are. They were just repainted. Yeah.
And I said, where the fuck is the power glove?
Well, there's that. Well, that was the Super Scope guns. No, earlier in the movie though, I think what you're thinking of, what you're talking about, is they had just the regular handguns, but they were using them as remote controls.
That's right.
The first time we saw was King Koopa. It was Dennis Hopper. He was
wearing a pizza. He was wearing a pizza, and he had a gun.
Like, why is he pointing a gun at the? Like, we thought, was he trying to point it at the guy on the screen or something? Like, no, he's. And then you said, oh, maybe it's some kind of remote control. And sure enough, later on, you see, is it Daisy?
Daisy uses it. Yeah.
Daisy's uses some kind of like, it's like a remote control. I'm like, why is it gun shaped? I don't understand.
It's like the gun from Duck Hunt, but it's not. It's more futuristic looking.
I was more a Hogan Valley guy myself.
But I mean, at this point, where the fuck's the power glove? It's so bad. I mean, why wouldn't you have used the power glove at any point in this movie? You could have used that to like punch.
Well, by that point, the power glove had already flopped big time.
It doesn't matter at this point. Throw everything you got at this movie.
Honestly, that's the truth. Yeah, and that whole last section of the movie, I was halfway tuned it out. I mean, I was watching the movie, but is there anything else you want to talk about as far as the rest of the plot?
I mean, this was probably the actual only real action sequence in the movie, if you think about it. It really was. I mean, you find out that all the fungus in the world of Dino Hatton, or the city Dino Hatton, because it is a world, is actually all the king of Daisy's
Yeah,
dad.
all the fungus in the city.
He basically de-evolved.
Played by Lance Henriksen when he turns human, by the way.
It is Lance Henriksen for the brief 10 seconds he's on screen. But you find out that the entire town that's covered in fungus is all from one person. I don't understand how that works. And then Daisy meets her dad. It's a big group. What?
There's the one room where he's mainly kept.
Yeah,
when he comes down to talk, it looks like a dropping scrotum that comes down.
It looks like a dropping scrotum, but it also looks almost like the uterus of the alien queen from Aliens when she's dropping an egg douche, and it keeps dropping these goops of slime and shit, and she's all trying to Father. It's
so in Aliens, Bishop was sucked up by that, and then she just pooped him back out.
Basically, that's basically what that was. But yeah, so you get to this whole big fight sequence, and throughout the movie, the fungus is actually helping Luigi and Mario, but Mario won't pay attention, and Luigi's it's helping us, and it gives him the little bomber man. And there's at one point, Mario does 10 turns of the little bomber guy and puts him on the ground, and this little bomber guy's got those little legs that go this.
One of those little walking things you wind up, but it would have taken 20 minutes to walk this far, and it went across the.
But it falls down a freeway to the ground, which should have exploded. Walks across a street, up a wall, up under the grate, up to right under where Bowser is, and then magically goes off right at the
longest bomb wick in the world.
Oh, sorry, Mario did 10 turns. I didn't know 10 turns equated to 10 miles for a bomber.
But it was only this long.
Yes.
But yet it took all that time.
It's ridiculous. It would have taken that bomber 8 hours to make it the length that it made in that time. But then you get to the part where effectively the end where Luigi and Mario use the Nintendo guns to de-evolve Koopa into basically a really shitty looking version of a T-Rex. And then he basically turns into a pile of goop. And that's basically how Koopa dies.
It de-evolved into the goop that
the primordial ooze of
that was the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, the primordial ooze of everything. And thus, saves, the city. But and then obviously Lance Henriksen turns back to Lance Henriksen for the 10 seconds and everything's, all great. And then basically Princess Daisy decides, I belong here. I'm not going back to New York with you or Manhattan. And that's effectively the end of the movie. It's she chooses to stay in a.
They tried to leave it open for a sequel that's never going to happen. But then Sean discovered something.
Well, yeah, the movie basically ends with her busting back in the door 5 days later with looking like she's now Sarah Connor from Terminator. Is we need you back, and we're back, and
what am I, kids become assholes or something?
Yeah, basically. But we're fast forwarding through the movie, and you're is there any post credits? I don't think so. And then all of a sudden, there's fucking post credit scenes in this movie.
Because now we're just trained to look for post credit scenes. So I'm moving the bar to the end to watch it, and Sean's there's not a post credit scene on this, and sure enough, there is.
There is, and it's the cousins, the Koopa cousins, and they're basically pitching their life story as a video game to the Nintendo reps. And it's so just
which is apparently the approach that they said,
it's funny.
Which is one of the approaches they said they wanted to take this movie is well, we're not making a movie of the game, because what we're doing is we're making a movie that's basically the story of the real people that they base the game upon. And it's I guess that's one approach you can take, but it's still horribly, horribly done. But yeah,
that was something 30 years never knew that there was a post-credit scene. That's almost
that's the approach you're taking with this. You need to put that scene at the end of the movie, not at the end of the credits, because especially back in 1993, people weren't trained to stick around. There was the occasional one. There was the Ferris Bueller. There was the Lethal Weapon,
the Universe.
Lethal Weapon 2 or 3. One of those had one. Things like that. But they were very rare that anybody had post-credit sequences.
It wasn't until I was in my high school years that I realized that Masters of the Universe that Skeletor survived at the end of that movie because it was in the post-credit scene. But yeah, no one knew to look at that shit. Never. I never knew that. Unless you went looking for it. But it's who's looking up Super Mario Brothers 1993 post-credit scene. No one's looking that shit up.
Well, nobody, because the internet wasn't around yet.
Exactly. Well, even when the internet's around, no one's going back to look and see if that movie had a post-credit scene. But yeah, this going back and rewatching this movie, I mean, yeah, like I want to say it's not like it made me miss Bob Hoskins, because I do, but it wasn't because of this performance. You know, if I want to miss Bob Hoskins, I'll go back and watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But yeah, Dennis Hopper, which is funny because didn't you like just say on one of our previous episodes like Dennis Hopper was always the villain and everything?
We were just talking about
Malcolm
McDowell on Tank Girl.
Yeah,
And I said there was like those mid-90s guys, the go-to guys for villains, and one of them was Dennis Hopper, who did like Waterworld, and he did this and some other stuff.
Yeah, it was because they also made Koopa like a germaphobe as well. We also forgot God, what's her name from Andor and Harry Potter? She was like Koopa's like queen or mistress or whatever, and she had this whole like subplot that like
I don't know what you know who she reminded me of in terms of her relationship with him was in Tammy and the T-Rex, like the nurse that was following him around.
Yeah, except
that felt like that to him.
Except in this one, she turns on Koopa at the end of the movie, and she's the one. And then like even like the way they dispatched her, like she puts the meteorite in the meteor, and then she basically gets like instantly killed and like turned into like a fossil up against the wall.
Yeah, she gets blown into the wall. Yeah,
it turns into a fossil, and then like Leguizamo makes a joke, and like her jaw like opens like this, and it's just like there was really no point to her character in the movie. Like if you remove her character from the entire film, the movie still is the same fucking film. So I don't know why she was casted. I don't know why she was given enough screen time. She really was. Because everything that she did in the movie, they could have had the cousins do, because they were already in the film.
I like Fisher Stevens, especially 90s Fisher Stevens. I loved him.
Yeah, there was no need for her to be in this movie. But yeah, Super Mario Brothers 93 is not a good film. It really isn't. And you can put the nostalgia goggles on all you want. It still is a really, really bad movie. It's got 3 good actors in it, in Leguizamo, Hoskins, and Hopper, but the script can't save them, and their dialogue can't save them, and the shitty everything outside of Yoshi, the shitty special effects, and the lack of plot and the lack of everything cannot save those 3 from trying to put on even remotely a passable performance. Thank God this new movie came out, because this movie is I believe Dan Merle said this on his review for the new one. They're like, because some people are posting, and Brian can't really attest to this because he hasn't really been reading anything about it, nor has he saw the new one. Some people are posting this ludicrous shit that the new movie is worse than this.
These are probably just the same people who have it out for Chris Pratt.
Or, yeah, who's totally fine in the movie, by the way. After 5 minutes, I forgot that Chris Pratt.
But there's people who don't like his personal politics, things like that.
I get that, but with 5 minutes into the new movie, you forget that Chris Pratt's playing Mario, because it doesn't sound like him at all in the movie. But people are saying that the new one is worse than this one. And Dan Merle's like, you're just being clickbait, because the new Mario is Lawrence of Arabia compared to Super Mario Brothers 93, which I was like, you're not wrong there. Like this, like
even most of the cast and crew and the filmmakers involved in this movie will tell you it's a piece of shit.
Everyone, no one's gonna defend this movie at all.
Well, that brings me to, let me just bring a few things of trivia and a few quotes that go along with this. I did my research on this. So the screenwriters said they first envisioned Super Mario Brothers as a subversive comedy influenced by Ghostbusters and The Wizard of Oz. Ghostbusters was the model. We were aiming towards funny, but kind of weird and dark. Yeah, okay, so you might have been aiming for funny, but weird and dark, but you came well short of Ghostbusters and Wizard of Oz. The concept of the parallel universe, so the way they think it tied in, was inhabited by dinosaurs, was inspired by Dinosaur Land from the recently released, at the time, Super Mario World, which came out in 1990. I have not played that. Does that in any way reflect this movie?
That's how Yoshi is introduced into the games.
So that's not the only way they can defend like why this is kind of like the games, is that apparently.
I mean, are we really going to say that that's even remotely close to the game? Because it's not. The Dino World is literally how they get Yoshi into the gaming world. Like, that's it.
Yeah. The first screenplay was written by an Oscar-winning screenwriter, Barry Morrow, whose story followed Mario and Luigi on an existential road trip so similar to Morrow's prior Rain Man that the production titled the script, or the people within the production titled the script Drain Man. Mario described the screenplay as a study in contrast, like Laurel and Hardy or Abbott and Costello, that would have an odyssey and a quest, like the game itself. One of the producers later said his story was more of a serious drama piece as opposed to a fun comedy. Couldn't have been worse. A filmmaker said, "We come from the Tim Burton school of filmmaking because our background is in animation and comic books. So we started off basing everything in reality and then tried to have fun, exaggerate it as much as possible." They want to follow the darker tone popularized by 1989's Batman and 1990's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which, okay, I will give them that. At the time, when they were doing the adaptations of comic books and things like that, everything was trying to go for a darker tone. So I can partially blame the tone of this movie on that trend.
I mean, that's still going on to this day. So
it is, but obviously, as you can see this week, that didn't fit Mario. What works for Mario is the bright, colorful, happy, joyful kind of approach to it. It's like for Batman, it works. Batman's supposed to be the Dark Knight. It works for Batman. Teenage Mutant Turtles, they're all about living in the shadows.
Yeah. So
and actually, the original comic book is way darker than like the comic book. So it works for that. But yeah, whatever. So this before production began, Disney purchased the distribution rights to the film and demanded significant rewrites. The final result was a script that was not at all like the script he and the directors and the cast had signed on to film, and the tone was not at all compatible with the sets which had already been built. Leguizamo said, "It's 8-year-olds who play the games, and that's where the movie needed to be aimed. But directors kept trying to insert new materials. They shot scenes with strippers and other sexually explicit content, which all got edited out anyway." Which by the way, it's not in this, but there is a 20-minute longer extended cut apparently. Who I guess one of the VFX guys had a copy of this rough edit of the movie, and you can find it online, like the Internet Archive. They've put it out, and they're trying to get them to allow them to put it on a DVD or something, where it's got all these deleted scenes. Or basically, it's a 20-minute longer version of the movie. It's still not this adult cut, but it's just I don't think I want to
watch it.
Huh?
Did you watch it?
I have not watched. I remember I asked you, I'm like, which version do you want to watch? And we're like, no, we don't want to watch the longer version.
My answer was, this movie's already going to be painful. Let's not make us watch a longer version of it.
Yeah, it's extended by 20 minutes with additional scenes, including Koopa devolving a technician into slime for the crime of sneezing. That's the random slime we saw show up in that one scene. They cut a scene there where he.
That's right. That's right. Because there's that moment where they slip on this goop of slime. We're like, why is there slime randomly on the floor? Okay, that makes more sense now.
More with Mario's rivalry, the mafia-affiliated Scapelli Plumbing Company, and an anti-Koopa rap by Spike and Iggy. Spike and Iggy, that's the Fisher Stevens, that's the two.
Yeah.
At the Boom Boom Bar, backed up with scantily clad lizard dancers. So there's that. So if you want to see a longer version of this movie, because you're even bigger masochist than us, you can find that online. And the last thing I will leave you with is Bob Hoskins asked about this movie. Actually, he was asked about the worst thing he ever did. He said, "The worst thing I ever did? Super Mario Brothers. It was a fucking nightmare. The whole experience was a nightmare. It had a husband and wife team directing whose arrogance had been mistaken for talent. After so many weeks, their own agent told them to get off the set. Fucking nightmare. Fucking idiots." And then he went on to say that he and Leguizamo would get drunk before each day of filming and would continue to drink between takes just to make it through. So, as I said, they knew it was bad. This was one big cash-in attempt. Basically, he's trying to use the name of the property of Super Mario Brothers, and it failed miserably. But I'm glad for fans of the franchise like you that now we finally have a good one.
Yes, and it is a good one. It is a very good one. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. If you guys hadn't checked out the review yet, I think it's the most Mario can be. Yes, it's Illumination, and I'm not a fan of Illumination, neither is Brian. But it's fun. It's fun. I had a blast watching this movie. A lot of people are attacking the thin plot and stuff like that, but you know what? It's fucking Mario. You don't need it to be the Lord of the Rings. It doesn't have to have this deep, intense plot. Mario needs to beat Bowser to save the Mushroom Kingdom and Princess Peach and Luigi. That's the plot. You don't need anything more than that. At least not for this first movie. I had fun with it. There's a ton of great Easter eggs for Nintendo fans. I think all the voice cast was great. There's one thing that bothered me about Bowser. I'm not going to mention it on here, but I think it's great. I think it's a blast. I went and saw it midday on a Thursday, and that place was packed with kids. Why they weren't in school, I have no fucking idea, but it was packed with kids. This movie's gonna make a ton of money. I think what 2 days in, it's already over. It's over 50 mil already, at least in the U.S.
Yeah, well, no, 2 days in, it was already it was over like $58 million, something like that. It's on its way to like over $150 million for its 5-day opening.
I remember it was a couple weeks back, and you were like, Sean, like they're projecting Mario to do 125 mil. Is it really supposed to be this good? And I was like, well, it's got a 5-day opening. I go, but yeah, it's the Illumination people, the people who do Despicable Me and Minions. Like they know what they're doing.
There's not been really good theater film in theaters for kids to go see in a while now. So it's just the demand of that's one the kind of movie that still makes money is kids movies. They especially animated stuff.
And unlike
on top of that, you have then the movie going on, like people like in their 20s and 30s who this is taps into nostalgia, so they're going to go see it.
Exactly. It's not like with Despicable Me. I mean, the Minions, you have the girls who, for some reason, think Minions are like the coolest thing ever. But Despicable Me doesn't have that connective tissue with people in their 30s and 20s, 30s, and 40s that have played Mario their whole life. This does. So even if you have kids or you don't have kids, you're still going to see this movie. I remember when I was in the movie. I mean, yes, there was kids and they were loud and stuff, but the loudest people in the theater were these 3 like college kids behind me who were geeking out at every Easter egg that popped up in this movie. And part of me kind of
felt the need to say it out loud and point it out to everyone. Yeah.
Yes. And part of me kind of wanted to tell them to shut up, but then the other part of me is like, they're not doing this to be annoying. They're doing this because they are generally excited. They are happy.
That's fine, but you're not on your couch at home. You don't need to say it out loud.
But it's one of those things too, where it was loud for me because I was right in front of them. They weren't loud to the point where people down the road could hear them or anything like that. I was just because I was within like 5 feet of them. But it's one of those things where normally I'd get pissed and I'd be like, dude, shut the fuck up. But these people were so damn happy with what they were seeing that I kind of was just like, you know what? That's what this movie is. It's fun. This is my childhood, teenage years, college years, playing with the Mario games. Like, like when I saw those things in my head, I was like, oh shit, they're like, they were like that. But it's like, you know what? They're not ruining the experience for me. If anything, they're pointing shit out that I didn't notice. So I was like, oh yeah, that is that guy. Cool. Thanks, nerds.
But the thing is, if I went and saw this movie, I wouldn't catch most of the stuff because I don't. Even what I knew at the time, I wouldn't even remember because I haven't played the games in decades at this point.
The biggest one that I didn't pick up on or didn't know is that they had the original actor who voices Mario in the movie, and I didn't know that until after I came home, and I was like, oh, that's really, really cool. I'm not gonna say who he plays. But there is a lot of Nintendo Easter eggs, nostalgias in this movie. There's a lot of blink and you miss it kind of things. And there's a lot of funny inside jokes that only people who played the original Nintendos would know.
So we got on a bit of a tangent. Go watch Sean's on the movie. He liked it. Go watch his review of it right here on the channel. Yeah. But this show was about the 1993 version of it. Best forgotten. Honestly, it's never even been released on digital. It's never been released on Blu-ray. The only thing you can buy is a DVD of it, or you can try to find it pirated online, because even the studio who makes it's like, yeah, we're not even going to try and cash in on the new one. We just would rather you forget about it.
I totally do have it on DVD.
Yeah, so that's it for this. Sean, hit him with all the ending stuff.
Yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the CineMasochism. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. Of course, follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Like Brian said, my current review for the new movie is out right now, so feel free to check that out. Also, my review for Air, which Brian also saw. Brian, what did you think of Air?
I very much enjoyed it. I think I felt the same as you. There are some things that bother me a little bit, but they eventually stopped leaning into it, so it worked.
Also, we have coming up is our latest episode of the Weekly Crusaders, where Brian and I talk about 2 movies that come out during this week in movie history. Next week's CineMasochism, do you know what you're picking yet?
I don't think we can look down a title for next week. No.
Okay, so we don't know what we're picking yet. I was gonna have him give us a hint, but we're just gonna have to stay in the dark because I don't even know what he's picking yet. We also have
Oh wait,
a
I
review.
take it back. I do. It is a notoriously unhinged actor, more unhinged than you've ever seen him before. Let's leave it at that.
I have no idea what that means. I will find out when you guys do. We also will have a review for Renfield next week. The Pope's Exorcist also comes out, but I do not know if I'm going to check that out in theaters. I might do the Brian thing with Mario and just wait for that to pop out on streaming because I don't know if it's worth paying money to go see in a theater. But we will be back next week for CineMasochism and another episode of the Weekly Crusaders. So we got plenty of videos pop up on the channel. So until then, we are the Movie Crusaders. That is Brian Michaels. I'm Sean Waskrug. And until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch the movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.